Hello, readers, writers, and critically minded people. I'm Britt Riderly. This is Writer's Ambition. For those of you who watched the first episode, thanks for sticking in. We hope you stay. For those of you who are just discovering my humble channel, welcome. We hope you stay a while. So, I alluded to these different facts and factors in the genre. I talked about gender and race and sexuality and ableism. And I want to have that conversation in a more full-throated way. So I decided, let's just have a series of conversations. So let's do that. Let's start with race. Let's start with whiteness. Why? Because we either do race first and fast or last and fast. And we rarely start with whiteness, and that's a problem. Because often whiteness is the most consistent factor when we're talking about race, especially in an American context. So I want to start with whiteness and pan out from there rather than getting to it last or, per usual, not at all. So I want to start with whiteness because that's a common denominator. Whether we name it or not, whiteness is a common denominator when we're talking about race, particularly in American context. No matter you naming it or not, whiteness is absolutely at play. Now, throughout this video, I will say whiteness and white people. Those are not the same thing, and I mean what I say when I say the thing. So whiteness is a set of practices and structures and supports a racial hierarchy that puts white people at the top. But white people are operating within whiteness. Those are two distinct things, though. White people walking around the world free will. They can choose to be full and active participants of whiteness and its violence, or can choose to use their access to whiteness to subvert it and be what people call allies. I don't mess with the language of allyship. That's a later video. So I want to talk about whiteness in the genre of YA fantasy under the question, who can have what adventures? So when we talk about whiteness and YA fantasy, I hear a lot of times people asking authors questions like, white authors, like, hey, where's the diversity? Like, why are all your characters white? And the answer is often some variation of, well, I'm white, so those are just the characters I write because, I don't know that person's experience. Two things. One, YA fantasy is not a sociological genre, and no one is asking for you to have a sociological grip on your text. Two, if you are concerned, as you should be, we should always be careful about how we write people. Whether you operate within that position and identity or not, we should always be careful. Writing can be a really dangerous thing and has been. So be careful. But don't be cowardly. When you decide to write a character in a position that is outside of your own, and we're talking about race, so I'll say race, do that. But you can hire sensitivity readers. And sensitivity readers are essentially editors who are reading for a particular presentation or representation of a character. So if you're a white man and you are trying to write a black woman, you would hire a sensitivity reader who reads that particular position of character, and they would make sure that nothing you're saying is harmful, is discriminatory, that you are making choices as aware as you can. And that gives you the chance to go back and revise and whatever, but it keeps you from making really harmful and spectacular mistakes for which Black Twitter will not forgive. But the point is, there's really no excuse as to why you can't write non-white characters as a white author. Now, there are a couple of fallacies that might make you think that you can't. There's two that I just want to focus on in our last moments together. One, there's this fallacy that I alluded to at the beginning of the video, that race enters with people of color. So that white people are raceless and whiteness is rendered invisible, because you can't critique something that you cannot see, right? That's the beauty of invisibility for privileged people. Invisibility for unprivileged people means you disappear and die. But that's another video as well. So The point is, there's a fallacy that race enters with people of color. So you don't want to have a political book. You don't want to get into all that stuff. So you just have white characters. Leads me to the second fallacy, which is that it's easier to suspend disbelief around white characters because you don't have to take them out of violent racial histories. Especially in an American context, the racial, globally, blackness has a very violent history. Specifically for our conversation in an American context, the Black Americans' time here has been bound by violence, suppression, oppression, and a ridiculously close proximity to death. So if you're a white writer and you're like, well, I can't write that because, people aren't going to be able to suspend disbelief around that. Or subconsciously you fear writing that because you can't imagine these characters outside of the context of slavery, outside of the context of convict leasing, outside of the prison industrial complex. That's not a failing of your reader. You're anticipating that, but it's really a failing from within. You've crippled your own imagination. You just can't imagine it. You can't imagine a Black vampire. You can't imagine an indigenous witch, which doesn't really make any sense because there's a long history of calling women of color witches that have close relationships to the land and to their ancestry. So actually that should be there for you, but it's not. Like, you can't imagine those things because you can't separate the socio-cultural representation of that character, of that identity from a character. Now, do you need to be responsible when you're writing a character and they have socio-political ties? Yeah, but you not being able to write a Black character because you think that means you have to write them in jail is your own failing, no one else's. And a good example of that is Stephanie Meyer's. And I'll close with this before story time, and I'll make it quick. So a good example is Stephanie Meyer. She's getting a lot of heat and attention because of her book coming out in August that's like Twilight, but from Edward's perspective. And people are rereading the Twilight saga, rewatching the Twilight franchise because that was their childhood. It was mine as well. I invested in those books, whatever. But reading them again, people are like, she's getting critiques about the way that she's using the Quiet tribe to support her plot about the werewolves and then using their stories for herself. She's getting critiques about lack of diversity all in every other sector of the book. And her director of Twilight, Catherine Hardwicke, did a interview with the Daily Beast and essentially said, I wanted diversity. Myers couldn't handle it. I proposed it. She couldn't picture Alice as a Japanese vampire. She couldn't picture any non-white characters, not just Black. She couldn't picture any non-white characters because Hardwicke said she wanted Alice to be a Japanese vampire. Stephanie Myers couldn't picture it. And she took Hardwicke to the book and said, look, they're sparkly pale skin, like they can't be anything but. And she had to wheedle her way into Laurent being Black, which, like, of course, the villain can be Black. But the point is, Stephanie Meyer's argument was that she had imagined those characters based off of friends, off of family, which means she created for herself a white environment that crippled her imagination such that she could not imagine any non-white characters playing a principal role in her book. Quiet tribe notwithstanding, because the whole controversy about her like appropriating their culture for her own thing, like that's its own situation. We don't have time for that in this video, but like that's the price you pay when you cripple your imagination. Your character pays the price, your readers pay the price. And if we're pursuing this question about what's the future of the novel, I think that we have to be honest that a lot of readers are getting tired of only reading about white characters and white worlds as if white people are the only ones capable of adventure. It's old. And so what is the future of the novel? Yes, but what is the future of your novel? Speaking of your writing, let's make our way over to story time.
I am the dream and the hope, after Maya Angelou. I woke up in a room down the hall, but I keep hearing voices. Already, Aunt Rain murmurs. What do you mean? Eliza asks, in time with her younger self, but her aunt only seems to have heard the little girl. Won't matter if I don't get you out of here. This way, Lizzie girl. A reluctant smile breaks over little Eliza's face. That's what Great Uncle River calls me. Sibling similarity. Quickly, I don't know how long it will take for the mean man to realize you're gone, but if you can get out of here before then, I may be able to convince him to cut losses. You work with him? Nothing so equal. Just made myself useful enough that he won't kill me for daring to advise him. She opens a window and looks out. Listen, Lizzie girl. The voices you're hearing, the reason you're hearing them is important. But for now, just until you're older, I need you to ignore them, okay? Promise? And keep it super secret. Even from Laz? Yes, baby. Only tell your great uncle, go straight back to his house. When the time is right, you'll need all the help you can get, but it's not now. Aunt Rain lifts Eliza onto the windowsill. The girls in our family have always been really athletic. Are you a tomboy, Lizzie girl? Little Eliza nods proudly. Rain kisses her niece's head of wild curls and helps her crawl out and onto the trellis. Auntie, I'm scared. You don't have to be. And for a moment, her aunt's voice sounds like Dr. Gibson, but not when she continues. Don't stop until you make it out to the main road. The neighbors might be friends of the bad man. But I need help. You are a black woman. You will always have help when you need it. Remember how I said to ignore the voices until you're older? A nod. Well, start when you get home. For now, I want you to focus on little girls like you who have also had to run home. Their voices will guide you, but you have to stay focused on home. Don't think about me, okay? Or you could get led back here. Just come. Not yet. Not until everything is burning down behind me. Eliza is pulled out the window after her younger self, and as soon as the little girl's feet hit the ground, Eliza opens her eyes to Dr. Gibson watching her attentively. Eliza? You were right, Doc. I did need to see that. Reach your full potential every Tuesday with Britt Riderly's Writer's Ambition. Then embrace adventure every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with Eliza Black. Don't leave us hanging. We'll see you soon.